Hi, everybody. It's Jennifer Ireson with Balanced Perspectives, and I'm doing something a little bit different this month. I just wanted to try a video. I know I'm not on camera. You're only going to get to see my keyboard today. The lighting in here is just not working with all the white stuff falling out of the sky and all that fun stuff going on. But I did want to make sure that we talked a little bit about diversity, equity, and equality in the workplace. So that's this November's newsletter topic. And I just thought I wanted to go over quickly some of the areas that, you should be considering when we're thinking about diversity. So I think there's a pretty good graphic in the newsletter this month on, what some of that looks like as far as, if you look at that inner circle, we've got all kinds of great things that we're covering, the basics, right? And this is where most people sort of stop when they're thinking about diversity, right? They're thinking age, they're thinking, race, ethnicity, gender. Sometimes people go as far as to think about physical abilities. But there's so much more to diversity than that, isn't there? We need to get into marital status and classification of jobs and military experience, religious beliefs, geographic location and education levels and levels of work experience and all those pieces of life experience that people bring into the workforce. So do you have any dinks working for you, double income, no kids? Do you have any single moms? Do you have the quote unquote traditional family working for you as well? And we need to take a good look around at our staff and are we missing any of these components, and is there a way to get some of these components into our workforce? Of course, we always want to pick the best candidate, but sometimes the best candidate might be the person that helps us fill some of these boxes so that we can have a very diverse workforce. When we are hiring, of course, everybody gets into, areas that could potentially, lead us into discrimination. And it's all in how we ask the questions at the interview and how we word things. And if you've heard me talk about recruitment before, you've heard me mention how we need to be careful when we're interviewing people with how we word our questions, what's legal, what's not legal. But we also need to word those questions and word our job ads in such a way that we are finding people who will help us to fill some of these diversity boxes within our team. So of course, we don't want to ask questions to candidates about their race and ethnicity and if they have mental disabilities and their family status, but there are other ways to get that information once somebody has become a hire, and again in the way that we word our ads and the types of questions that we ask, as long as we're within the bounds of human rights and not crossing those lines, then we're good. I think the main point that I wanted to bring across this month for diversity, equity, and equality is that it's good for business. I know a lot of business owners get very concerned about how this, will make their lives more difficult, or their other staff may not be interested. But it does go back to, things that we talked about in June, for instance, and pride, and how the more diverse our work team is, the more diverse our clientele will become. And so because the marketplace is so diverse, there's 88 different countries represented in the city of Grande Prairie alone. We want to make sure that we do have that diverse work team in order to help make sure that really happens for us. So some of the things that we want to consider as well when we're opening up our workforce to try and fill some of these other categories is to try and think about that equity issue, right? So what do we as an employer need to provide in order to give better opportunities to people who may not fit into our current boxes? So one of the graphics that I've seen in the last few years is around, there's a couple of people standing at a fence. And so when we show equality, we show everybody is standing on the same size box. So now everybody is getting the same thing, but we still have people who are not able to try to participate. And so when we look at equity, then we look at giving the right people the things they need in order to be treated equally. So, in the case of the people standing at the fence, the person who is less tall receives a couple of boxes as opposed to the person who can already see over the top of the fence. Now, some of those graphics go a little bit further and they tear down the fence completely so everyone can see without having any assistance or things like that, and that's great. I just think it's the wrong place for that particular example because we don't want people out on the ball field with the players, obviously. But you understand the idea is that if we can take down these barriers, we don't need to provide these other opportunities to people. But before that happens in the greater world, we will need to make sure that we are, how do we create this more diverse workplace? How do we make it easier for people to get into our work environment? And so, that equity could be that we are allowing, additional time for people to complete, testing, or we're allowing them, we're giving them the ability to have a text to voice writer. Maybe it's an interview in a different way than what we have been doing in order to accommodate some of their, needs and demands, not demands, but their requests, I should say, of how they will better perform in these situations. So I like that diversity is asking us, right, like who is in the room, right? And who's not in the room, right? And that's where equity comes into. So who's trying to get into the room but can't? And then when we talk about inclusion, we talk about, has everybody who's in the room actually been heard? And if you've ever been at a team meeting, sometimes there are some people who talk over everyone else, and we have some people on our team who never get an opportunity to speak out loud. And so that's what inclusion is looking for, right? Like, how can we overcome this? So one of the other things that we need to think about when we're trying to include, and create a more diverse workforce, one that's, equitable for everyone, is what can we do as a company to assist with this? So are we using good language in our documents? Are we using they or their instead of he or she, because that's more applicable to everyone? Everyone can be a they or a their. Not everyone is a he or a she. What kind of changes do we need to make to our policies or to the way that we do our work? Have we made it so that people who have children are not able to work for our company because the hours that we start and end our days don't work for them? Is there a way that we can adapt those hours? I know a lot of companies, they say, oh, well, everybody starts at 7. Well, do we need to start at 7? Could we have a staggered start time and a staggered end time, which really at the end of the day provides more hours of work that the business could be open? So there's lots of ways that we can look at that and things that we can do in order to kind of, open those doors a little bit more to people. What are some of the things you can do? Well, you can talk to your company, talk to your team that you currently have, ask them, what are we missing? Are we missing a key area or a key person on our team? Is there a type of customer that we would like to get? And if there is, what are their interests? What are their values? How do we find that? And how do we bring them to our organization? And maybe that's through having an employee or two who fit into that demographic, and then getting them to assist us with our marketing, our communications, and breaking down some of those doors and barriers. So there's lots of companies out there that are doing little things now and then. If you're not sure how you can do it, give us a shout or send us an email, and we'd love to be able to, have a chat. We can walk through your website. We could walk through some of your documents and just talk a little bit about how a few changes here and there can make your workplace a little bit more diverse and a little bit more inclusive for all of your workers. So that's what we wanted to talk about for November. I hope you've enjoyed this short little video that I've put together, watching my keyboard blink and listening to my cats fight in the background. And hopefully you've learned a little bit more about diversity, equality, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Thanks, everyone. This is Jennifer Ireson with Balanced Perspectives.